Welcome to a football show, Victory Tuesday edition of the show, Monday Night Football edition of the show. That is Paul Kuharsky. I am Braden Gall. We are brought to you by Sinkers Beverages, and Paul, fresh off a trip to Miami and back again. How are you, sir? Good to see you, my friend.
I walked into my house exactly 90 seconds ago.
Is that really how close you got it?
Well, no, I mean, I changed my shirt.
Okay.
I washed my face. I set up
nice.
my stuff. But I came online, 90 seconds ago. So
look,
here I am.
You've been busy. You've been busy. We got a lot of stuff to discuss today, and not the least of which, of course, is I don't know if this is going to be helpful information for Titans fans, but there was a lot of stats and data out there floating around. We've talked about the too high safety look and all the defense winning in the NFL. Well, the numbers, some folks did some research at ESPN, and the numbers are pretty alarming on how bad offense has been through the first 4 weeks of the season, and that's going to be some good news for Titans fans. We'll do that a little bit later on in the show. I do have one question for you. We'll see how you respond to my one question about other things outside of Titans football that I'm going to ask you later on. We'll get into special teams. We'll get into the offensive line. We'll get into the running game. We're going to get into the quarterback situation, Will Levis and Mason Rudolph, and we're going to talk about a win for the Tennessee Titans and for Brian Callahan, his first of his head coaching career. So a lot of stuff to discuss. If you want to get into the comment section, please do so. Please share the product on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, thumbs up, retweet, repost, share, etc. You guys know what to do there. Turn on the notifications on the YouTube page as well. And if you're listening on the podcast app, please rate, review, and subscribe. 5 stars only. If you do not give us a 5-star review, you are a hater. Sinkers Beverages. Special thanks to Sinkers Beverages for being a great, local, and amazing sponsor here on a football show and across the 440 Sports Network. They sign up for the in-crowd. We'll tell you a little bit more about that, but they've got some really killer stuff coming up over the course of the next few months for you guys. So make sure you stay tuned. In-crowd is their sort of it's their rewards program. They got really good wine pairings and wine tastings coming up. They got liquor tastings. They got allocations. They got all kinds of good stuff. Follow them on the socials as well. Sinkers Bev on Twitter, Sinkers Beverages on Instagram as well. So first of all, PK, we're going to play a little bit of Callahan. You hustled back from Miami via airplane and got a chance to talk with Callahan today over at the facility. So I got a couple of clips we're going to play for you guys, one about the quarterback and one about the game last night. But just in general, I want you to sort of describe the scene in Miami. You wrote about it. PaulKuharsky.com is the website. Go sign up. Pay for good journalism, support Paul and all the work he's doing. But the scene, just kind of tell us and explain to us sort of what it was like. First ever win for a head coach. I don't want to put too much into this, but it is sort of an important moment for a head coach to sort of do that. They scored 30 points for the first time in, 1,000 days, over 1,000 days. What was it like down there in the locker room?
It was not a good crowd. It was hot, obviously. South Florida, end of September, not pleasant. It's 9-3 at the half. It's miserable football game throughout. I mean, it's not a very entertaining 31-point game. But the first half, especially miserable, no moving of the ball by either team, and looked to be, just ugly. We figured we didn't really know what was going on outside of checking our computers on the Detroit Seattle game, but knew it had to be better than what people were watching with Tennessee Miami, which was just another one of these ugly games. And look, they did a nice job to beat a team that is in more disarray than they are, with the third string quarterback who hasn't been around for a long time, that couldn't calibrate with the speed of his two great wide receivers. And the Titans defensively played sound, finally limited the perimeter runs with A-Chain in particular, who is a speedster, could get around the corner. And, it was just kind of a slog. But if you're getting to the 30, you wouldn't say, well, the offensive outburst is going to be 5 field goals, a safety, and 2 touchdowns, with one of the touchdowns, right near the final horn. So they broke this streak that had lasted, over 1,000 days, 38 games. And it's a relief. This win is a relief to the franchise, to the organization, to the guys. They celebrated. and they deserve to celebrate. They suffered 3 really ugly losses, and now they got on the other side of another ugly game, but they haven't played in anything that's been fun to watch. And I think you're hinting at it. There's not been a lot of NFL football that has been good to watch. The Chiefs are undefeated with the best quarterback in the game, who's down 2 of what were supposed to be their best receivers, and they're finding ways to win. And just the NFL right now is not a really good product, and the Titans are right at the head of the line of the not really good visual product.
They're leading the way, as it were, on the not good product. So we'll get to all of that stuff on the episode today. Let's hear from Brian Callahan. This was sort of his strategy yesterday. This was at the press conference today on Tuesday, sort of about how he called the game, the management, and all that good stuff. Here was head coach Brian Callahan.
Yeah, I mean, I think we didn't ask a lot of Mason in the second half of that game. I thought we were running the ball well, and we were going to keep doing that. But to me, it's very similar to kind of how Chicago went. Like, had a good lead, and we're running the ball well, and we just had a chance. Now, I also called it very conservatively in that regard, because I was trying to make sure that because our defense was playing lights out, and I was just going to keep running the football. And we ran it well, and we were running it well, and it worked out for us. But yeah, Mason managed the game well. He did a nice job of just making sure that we didn't have anything disastrous happen, because at that point, that's really all that was going to help them get back in that game. And he did a nice job of making sure we were clean operationally and the ball was secured, and it was good. It was a good, boring way to finish the game. And look, I'm all for it. But that's a good thing. There is lessons to be learned in that for sure.
So they didn't ask a lot, and they wanted him to manage the game, and that's all fine, right? They got the win, and there's some there should be a lot of satisfaction in them winning the game, right? But I think most of the fan base, the guys I'm talking to in my 22 and on Twitter, is there relief that they won and that they proved that they can win? Yeah. Is there any real excitement connected to them winning the game? No, because they beat a bad team with a 3rd-string quarterback. You've got to be able to beat a 3rd-string quarterback, right? Last week, they couldn't beat a 2nd-string quarterback.
I mean,
you beat
Paul,
a 3rd-string quarterback.
He's actually a 4th-string quarterback, technically.
Yeah. Boy, you put Tim
Boyle
ahead of him. So he's a 4th-string quarterback. And then, you're doing it, handcuffing your quarterback when the coach came in because he was going to be a dynamic play caller who was going to reinvent your passing game and give you something different. Whereas this is kind of the same. This is the same thing that Mike Vrabel would have done. So I'm not condemning Callahan. He found a way to win the game, but the way he found to win the game is the same way the former coach would have found to win the game. And the kind of universal consensus for getting rid of the former coach was, well, you need to modernize and learn to play offense and everything. And yes, they got 31 points, but they did it in, would we agree? It's kind of the prehistoric way to get 31 points. And so there are no high flying, big passing yards that come with this. And it's more of the same. So they're either losing or they're winning in this ugly, can't barely stand to watch it way.
So shout out to my guy, Joe, avid listener of the show. He shows up to all the events. He supports all of us, and been a good friend of the show and the company for a long time. And he basically is like on a text rampage last night with me. And he's just like, I effing hate losing. I can't stand it. I need the wins. And so I say that because I'm going to rattle off some numbers here to sort of illustrate what you're saying. 3.9 yards per play for Tennessee. 8 penalties for Tennessee. 34 minutes time of possession. 244 yards of offense. 2 of 12 on 3rd downs. It was 9-6 with 9 minutes to go in the 3rd quarter. It was one of the ugliest combined professional football halves that I've ever seen. The Titans and the Dolphins. And a lot of that is the Dolphins being completely inept. They can't even get lined up. I think there was 4 or 5 illegal shift formations. Clearly,
4 accepted, 1 declined.
Clearly the quarterback was not used to the pre-snap motion that Mike McDaniel wants to run and all that stuff. The special teams were still largely atrocious. 3 huge mistakes. They had a punt tipped. They had the onside kick at the very end in which McDonald was going crazy, the coach there. They had a big return from Berrios that set up the field goal that made it 9-6. Look, there's a lot to be taken from this. That is okay to celebrate if you're a Titans fan. First win for the coach, first time for 30 points, got to win. You're going into a bye week. You ran the football very well, 40 carries, 142 yards. Spears and Pollard had a combined 41 touches and almost 200 yards, almost 150 yards total there between the two of them. Only allowed 1 sack, which is an improvement. There's all things that you can say, hey, you know what? If I'm rooting for my team here, this is what I want to see against a bad team on the road in which you got a dominating win. And there's a bunch of comments already, Paul, asking about Levis, and so we'll get to that, and we'll touch on that, and we'll discuss it. But I don't know how you take too much away from this that is sustainable for the entire season. You're not going to play a 4-string quarterback. You're not going to win going 2 for 12 on third down. You're not going to win averaging 3.9 yards per play. All of that is a concern. You also can just take a moment and say, you know what, losing sucks, and I'm glad we got a W if you are a fan of the team.
I'm not even that impressed with the run game. I mean, Pollard had the 41-yard run, which is great. That's their big play, right? But Pollard, 22 for 88 with the 41-yard run and a touchdown. Spears, 15 for 39. That's 2.6. Pollard had an average of 4, and that's with the 41-yard run. So, and overall, 40 carries. So you want the volume, right? You want the volume for 142 yards, but that's a 3.6 yard average. That's not killer. If you do that on a regular Sunday against a regular team, you're probably not going to get to 40 runs if you're averaging 3.6. And a lot of that comes in the 141 yard carry. True. So they were talking today like, hey, we got to fix. We've got these 2 great running backs, everybody was saying. And with these 2 great running backs, we'll be able to shape a game, run block first, pass protect on fewer snaps. Yes, if you shape the game perfectly, everything's looking up. But how often are you going to be able to shape the game perfectly to your needs? Great teams shape the game perfectly some of the time. You're not a great team. You're better at run blocking than pass protecting for sure. Pollard and Spears are encouraging, but they've not broken games open by any means. So I'm not even putting the run game in this is a secure feature. I'm encouraged by it, but it's still in the need to grow department.
Even in the takeaway for the Titans, the first one of the season, is the microcosm of the season. Even in the takeaway, it wasn't anything that they did. It was Tyreek Hill dropping a lateral and then not chasing the football. Now, did Arden Key do the right thing and scoop it up? Absolutely. Should he have kept running and maybe forced the referees to let him run? Maybe. Could the refs have let him play? Certainly. But the point is that the Titans were opportunistic there. They didn't make a play. And so even inside of that, way to go. Congrats. First takeaway. Yay. You didn't force a fumble. You didn't force a bad throw and pick him off. Harold Landry is good once again. We got to continue to say he's having a good season. But again, Tyler Huntley. So here's Andrew's couple comments here from Andrew. So Andrew says, game was a microcosm of the season. Levis is killing the team, and Callahan is a good coach. I'm not sure we're there yet on either of the two, but certainly Mason Rudolph played well enough, and we will get to the Levis conversation. It's going to be a big part of this. Brett says, are y'all daily? We need more good sports talk radio options in this time slot. We are here on Mondays at 3 o'clock. Paul's on Thursdays at 1 o'clock. You've got Music City Audible on Mondays and Wednesdays. You've got Hot Read Podcast with JT and Stoney on Tuesdays and Fridays at 4 o'clock, and they're coming up immediately following us today, so check that out. Myself, Stephen Godfrey, we are live on Talking SEC Football on Wednesdays at 3 o'clock. So, yes, we are available. A lot
of alternatives to bad terrestrial radio.
Yes. And Andrew then continues.
On a regular Sunday, I go live from the press box Sunday evenings.
And Andrew continues to say, not the same at all. I'm assuming he's referring to how you were comparing Vrabel. And first of all, just let your mind drift with what Mike Vrabel thinks about what's happening to this Tennessee Titans team. A penny for his thoughts would be absolutely the scoop of the century to get Mike Vrabel on the record about watching.
Last night was an absolutely Vrabel-esque win. Run it, ask your quarterback not to make mistakes. He would have liked more play action off of it. Play sound defense, settle for field goals. Which also is a microcosm of Jeff Fisher football. It's a microcosm of Tennessee Titans football. Outside of a year of Arthur Smith and a year where they turned Steve McNair loose. This is a Tennessee professional NFL football since they became the Titans.
Yeah. Eddie says Colt Anderson, who's the special teams coach, seat needs to be on fire, if not outright fired. That's a little early, but almost 3 punt blocks in 4 games is inconceivable. It's an excellent Princess
They
Bride
made it like
reference
it
there.
was, Brian has a good way of downplaying some bad things, and that didn't turn out to be a bad play. Now, I don't see how Nick Westbrook-Akine could have possibly, even if that had been a judged a recovered situation, the Miami guy had the ball all alone for a good while before Nick came and wrestled it free.
Yeah.
So I don't know how, upon review, if they were determining possession, which they weren't because the Titans had touched the ball earlier and they declared it dead in that situation. But Westbrook took it away late.
Yeah.
The officiating, by the way, was a cluster all
I
night.
agree.
There was at one point where there was no confusion about anything, and they said, hey, this game is dragging on and it's miserable. Let's go over here and have a long huddle to extend it.
So my brother-in-law, shout out to Ben. My brother-in-law was there with his wife. They have a 1-year-old son. It was one of their first times out of the house without the baby. They were there. He's a Titans fan. They were not. They were very insulting of the situation around them. They had a lot of fun talking about the fans that were in attendance there. I think trashy was the word that I heard from my brother-in-law. Chef Rand said, I've changed my tune on this season as much as we want to crucify Levis. He is our only hope. His overall progression is worth all the ugly week to week. All right. Okay. Everybody take a deep breath. Sinkers Beverages. Okay. Go to Sinkers Beverages. Sign up for the in-crowd. They got great options, great beer fridge, huge beer fridge. Proud sponsors of all your good local Titans content here on the 440 Sports Network. So make sure you go support Sinkers Beverages. East Nashville, almost 40 years of serving the community, 3-time liquor store of the year, 3-time champion of liquor stores in Nashville. And of course, their sister store, Bluegrass Beverages, up in Hendersonville, serving the community for over 50 years. So make sure you go check them out as well. All right, that brings us to the Levis conversation. Now, I'm going to play. Basically, Brian Callahan after the game said, Will Levis is our starter. And I think that's the right thing to say. I think it's the only message he can distribute. Let's hear what he had to say today.
Let me set this up.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, because I was thinking last night, excuse me, we have consistently, you and I and virtually everyone has, whether you're for it or against it, set up why the Titans are doing what they're doing and how this year is shaping up. But I was thinking, we have not had Brian Callahan say this on the record. We've not had Brian Callahan standing behind a microphone or in front of tape recorders and video cameras say what we think. And so I set him up for this today. And I said, is your thinking that you want to give him this season, to develop him, to get him beyond bumps in the road, and to see all that you can see of him this year? So that's the setup for this answer from Brian Callahan. What's the Titans' philosophy with Will Levis this season?
Yeah, that's exactly how we look at it. And I appreciate Mason's professionalism. I appreciate how prepared he was and ready to go into the game. But Will is our starting quarterback. And I said it last night, and I'll reiterate it again, that when he's healthy, he's starting. And hopefully he's healthy for Indy and we're ready to roll, and he's the starting quarterback, because it's hard to play quarterback in the NFL, as everybody knows. There does take some development. Guys make young player mistakes. You see it all across the league right now. And we're going to find out everything about Will that we can. And he's going to continue to grow and get better and play better. He needs to play better for us. And at the end of the day, I believe that he will. And that's where I'm at with that whole thing. There's no controversy. There's no second guessing. That's what's happening. So that's probably as clear as I can state it.
Let's note that this quote that all of us are going to refer to for the rest of the season, right? What was the date that Callahan gave that definitive answer on Levis? October 1st, right? That's Terry McCormick trying to get in there with some other question to cut it off. So what was the date that Terry cut off Callahan on the definitive Levis answer All of us now have October 1st, right?
All
That's
right,
a
all
very
right.
handy quote to have for all of us, right?
Yeah,
We're
no, I agree.
earmarking an October 1st quote that's a definitive quote from Callahan about the strategy with Levis.
Are you done?
Everyone was fascinated with it except for Terry.
Apparently. All right, so let me give you my I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, and I only because I don't think there's a controversy to discuss here. As Brian Callahan has said, there's really not a lot of like the fans are going to do what the fans are going to do about this. But let me lay out my theory on this, or just my thought reaction to last night. Will Levis should not be anything but the starting quarterback for now for the Tennessee Titans. And Brian Callahan has said as much. That's what they're here to do. And one of our comments, I think, had earlier said, isn't it? I'm of the opinion now, and I'm paraphrasing here. Let me see if I can go back and find it. I'm paraphrasing here that like learning what he is the most important thing, whether that's wins or losses or not. But learning what he is the most valuable thing the Titans can acquire this season. So here's the deal. Throwing an interception where you clearly miss a player on the very first possession, then getting an injury where it doesn't seem super serious, but is serious enough to affect your throwing motion and your ability to play the position, only to have Mason Rudolph, the backup, come in and manage the game without any glaring mistakes for the entire 3 quarters to the first victory of the season is the worst possible narrative situation that could have happened to Will Levis. I don't think it dictates his starting or not starting. Brian Callahan has said as much. You and I both agree that this team serves no purpose to have Mason Rudolph starting. But the way that unfolded on Monday night is the worst possible thing that could have happened to him from a narrative creation standpoint. It is all the bad stuff that you didn't want to see. Oh, there's if you want to be a fan that says, see, I told you it should be Mason Rudolph. He managed the game. 7 scoring drives out of 11. They were all very short, but 7 scoring drives out of 11. As soon as he took over, they went and kicked a field goal and scored points. They won a game for a bad interception on the first possession, league leading 9th turnover. I don't think that Mason Rudolph should be the starting quarterback of the Titans. But last night was the worst possible thing that could have happened to Will Levis from I'm trying to establish myself as the guy for this fan base. That's sort of where I landed.
I'll apply your toughness logic, right? I think you show him that game and you say, just damn do this, right? You're tough enough for, you don't have to say this. This is what you and I would think. He's tough enough to handle that. You show him that. You say, just do this. And if you can't do this over the next quarter of the season, well, the clock is starting to tick now. We want to give you the whole year. But if you can't master the mundane, which we've talked about, if you can't handle the basics and not do stupid stuff, I mean, we won with 76 passing yards. All right. Now, it's not going to be the case that we could do this every game, but some form of this is oftentimes going to be enough for us. And all we want is for you to start with that. And if you can't start with that over the next quarter of the season, you're putting us in a terrible spot where we're going to have to consider him. And we don't want to consider him. So don't make us consider him. Watch that and do that. And he then, by your thinking that you articulate very well, that I'm on board with, he's got to be tough enough to take that, absorb that, and put it to practical use. And if he can't put it to practical use over the next quarter, let's say, well, that's an indicator that's an indicator as much as the stupid decisions that he continues to make that he's not your guy.
I agree. And so some comments here. Andrew says, I want Levis to get a better draft pick. Starting Mason and getting the 8th pick is the worst scenario. That's one of your theories on this as well. Nick says the worst result this year is not to know whether Levis is good enough to be a solid starter in this league. That's the nightmare for this team. I agree. You can't end the season and Brian Callahan in a moment of privacy not know what he wants under center next year.
I agree with all of that, but I think it's important to say Brian Callahan in none of this is thinking about what number draft pick they're getting or any of that.
Of course.
He wants to win games, establish himself as a successful coach, get Levis to that place. If and when he pulls Levis for Rudolph, it's going to be because he wants to win games. He's not thinking anything about the draft. Rand Carthon shouldn't be either. I mean, Rand Carthon's getting ready for a draft. It doesn't matter where he's picking. He's watching college ball.
And outside of a personal relationship that has developed between the quarterback and the coach over the course of the last 6 or 7 months, Brian Callahan has no reason to be loyal to Will Levis, ever. His job is to win football games, and he didn't draft him. He didn't pick him.
Loyal to the people that help him get a result.
He inherited him. He did not pick him, and that's not his guy, which means he can cut bait if he wants to. Trevor says, leave Levis in and keep the memes coming. Yeah, okay, sounds good.
By the way, that meme I think is unfair because and I feel compelled to defend him. The one that has him
where he's grimacing on the sideline,
yeah, with his nose looking extra big.
He's
because
hurting.
you can take a bad picture of anybody at any time. Like if you focus a camera on you or me during this or during anything, a lot of these people aren't on camera for any extended period of time. You could snap a bad picture of anybody at any time. So if you want to be memorialized by the worst picture somebody could take of you, just think of that as you pass that one around. Look, there's plenty of bad Will Levis stuff, meme the interception, meme the action. But if you just meme a guy having an awkward looking moment on the bench, I think that's low caliber fun at a guy's expense.
And if you listen to my wife, I'm capable of making those disgusting faces when I'm trying to be good looking in a picture. She'll tell you that I'm terrible at that.
Well, I mean, it starts with the mustache.
Well, that's true. That's the one thing she does like about me is the mustache, strangely enough.
Talk to her.
John Gall, no relation.
Also, you're back to a t-shirt and a hat. I thought we'd made progress.
It's been a tough day, Paul. Let's not act like they don't move the ball without Levis, says John. That is true. Nick Fuchs seconds that and says, yeah, people act like Levis can't move the ball. We move it fine. The turnovers are what kills him. It will obviously turn it over more than Mason. They just don't let Mason throw it. There was one moment, by the way, and you weren't able to see this because I was watching the broadcast. There was one moment. I generally like that broadcast team, the Fowler, Riddick, and Orlovsky broadcast team. I think they generally do an okay job for kind of like the second tier off the bench crew for ESPN. But they were basically explaining that Will Levis had never thrown these kinds of passes before at one point and had never moved the ball on offense like this before at one point. And I was like, you clearly didn't watch the Green Bay game because yes, they were in a throwing situation and yes, they were down big and they had to chuck it. They were able to make some throws and make some plays over the course of the last couple of games. Maybe not the first one against Chicago. Here's my question to you, Paul. There's a lot of y'all in the comments saying this, and you just kind of alluded to it. Brian Callahan is going to do what's best for the team to win games. He has to balance developing his quarterback with winning games. Where's the break-even point for you? You mentioned a quarter of the season, 4 more games. They got a bye week. Then they play the Colts. Then they got a bunch of rookie quarterbacks, young quarterbacks, and then they're off to the division races in the final 6 or 8 weeks of the season. Is there a moment that you say, we're still seeing the same stuff, and they've got their answer? And the answer is no. There's also a chance that they have that they take a break with him, right? That there's a moment where, hey, we need you to take a break and watch the game for this one. Where is that for you when that happens?
Yeah, I don't think you can draw a line at this point. And I think, if and when that moment comes before the end of the season, it's contingent on how he's played, what kind of results they've gotten, what kind of improvement he's made in different areas. I mean, I think we all agree decision-making is the number one thing. So, can he make better decisions overall and still have bad moments? Yes. So if he's on a track where he's doing that, I don't think that there is a cutoff point. If they can say, yes, he's making if he goes from making a bad decision every week to making a bad decision every other week to making a bad decision every third week, that's progress. And you'll take that. If he's doing something, he went from making outlandishly bad decisions with the Chicago play and the Jets play to making regular, what they're calling regular interception decisions. So the first 2 weeks, outlandishly bad. The second 2 weeks, what they would call normal bad. Now what comes? Now the next thing would be seeing guys and not making those bad decisions. So
not being able to see the 6'5", 280 pounder is concerning.
both these throws, the last two
Yeah.
interceptions against Jair Alexander and now against the giant lineman, seem like predetermined throws that he's going to make no matter what the defender is doing. That's the next stage. All right. I see some trouble there. I'm not making that throw. I'm either making another throw, I'm running, I'm throwing it away. That's the next stage of progress.
Nick says Callahan got hired agreeing that they were trying to have Levis prove himself for the entirety of the year. To say he has no tie to him isn't true. I don't think he has any loyalty to the quarterback at all. And if the quarterback is not winning games, his loyalty is to the organization and to win football games.
Well, he's got loyalty to him this year in that he's got no feasible alternative.
Ed says, but he also should be loyal to Amy. And if Levis is Amy's guy, then I wonder what the discussion would look like. Now, here's
where the Levis is Amy's guy.
So here, let me put you on the scent here and see what you come up with maybe over the course of the next 6 months here. Amy Adams Strunk runs a $1 billion company that is in the entertainment business. And you know what they are currently trying to do? They are
sell tickets to a new building.
They are currently trying to upcharge all of their season ticket holders by thousands of dollars to buy into the new Titans facility. And I know season ticket holders that are not doing it because of what they've seen on the field. I think that's wrong. I don't think you should give up your tickets because of 4 games. I think that's stupid. But if it's going to be awful, I guarantee you Amy Adams Strunk is loyal to her business first than to whatever takes place with Will Levis personally. That is a Rand Carthon and Mike Vrabel decision.
Also,
that's it.
If Amy Adams Strunk loves Will Levis, which I don't know that there's evidence of her, being involved in his selection or having affection for him beyond any regular player or any quarterback that they pin their hopes on. You know what Amy Adams Strunk is good at? Changing her mind. She loved Mike Mularkey. She loved John Robinson. She loved Mike Vrabel. Guess what happened to all of them? When they stopped producing the results that she liked, or when one of those guys pitted her against the other guy, she no longer loved them, to the point that she was willing to fire them and continue to pay them.
Lots of money. Yeah. Here's a question that I think is interesting, because I did notice this in the game, and we got to bring this up. Brian says, is there any reason to believe that the line blocked better for Rudolph? I don't like that part of the question. I don't think that has anything to do with that. The line is also a meritocracy competing for their jobs right now, trying to be as good as possible.
That'd be really dumb.
But Barking thinks he sees pre-snap. I thought Mason Rudolph looked smarter before the snap than Will Levis did. And if it's decision-making and processing that are the questions about Will Levis, the one area where, yes, decisions, not taking risks. We know Mason Rudolph's better at that. He's also not as good as throwing the football. But I definitely saw a little bit more control of the offense. And Callahan told us in one of those fireside chats earlier in the season, before the season started, and I thought it was a really interesting answer, that he said about 20% of the plays for his offense or for the NFL should be checked at the line by the quarterback. I saw Mason Rudolph doing that more often than Will Levis in just a small sample size. I thought he did a better job of some of that stuff last night. Does that mean he can do it in the future, that he's the answer? Of course not. Will Levis needs to add it to his game, in my opinion. I don't know if
you would expect a veteran to be better equipped to check at the line. I think he got the offense to the line of scrimmage faster. I think Levis takes them down. The play clock is ticking. There was one play, where he's clapping like crazy to avoid a delay of game. I think they come up against the clock too often with Levis. But certainly, and I emphasize this a lot, sacks are more of a quarterback stat than people want to say. They want to pin the blame directly on a single blocker missing a single block, which is sometimes the case. But the quarterback also needs to evade better, get rid of the ball better, all of those things. That's why, Peyton Manning and Tom Brady may not have had the best lines at times, but were still very good at not getting sacked. And Mason Rudolph was discernibly better at that. He also only dropped back 20 times. What did
17 he was 9 of 17, and Will Levis was 3 of 4. They had 21 pass attempts last night.
And what did Will Levis do against Green Bay? It was much higher number.
I think it was like 24 of 35, something like that.
35
Yeah.
pass attempts, which is, give the offensive line 15 more. That's what they're saying. They were much better in this game because it was much more manageable, because they were run blocking first and they were pass blocking second.
And technically
they were ideal scenario.
Technically, with the one sack, there was only 22 dropbacks last night. And then against the Packers, there were a bunch of scrambles by Levis and 8 sacks, which means it was like 45 pass plays that they called and had dropbacks on that. Andrew says Latham played really well, not great. Look, I think we said this every single time we've been on the air. The offensive line is going to be a run-first group first until they develop into pass-pro guys. I thought there was plenty of good moments for Kuharsky and Latham yesterday. Certainly a step in the right direction for that side of the offensive line. I'll give him credit for that. On one of the better plays, Lloyd Cushenberry, of course, called for a bad hold on one of the better plays. So the offensive line
had 2 penalties. The offensive line had 2 penalties in the first 6 or 7 plays.
Yeah, it's a work in progress. It's a work in progress, the offensive line. It all has to work together eventually. What about the defense here? No Jeffrey Simmons.
Jeffrey Simmons, here's news that came out just a little while ago, and he was doing some talking when I was leaving the locker room, says that he has a Tommy John tear in his elbow.
UCL.
And that he's feeling much better. And it sounds like it's something that he'll be able to play through. But as soon as you see Tommy John, I mean, for a baseball player, that's a death knell. That's an 18-month deal. Not going to be an 18-month deal for him, but he's wearing a big brace. Pain is down, and expectation is he'll be back and ready to go after the bye week, but not ideal.
As 2 New York baseball fans who both have teams in the playoffs, thank you, Francisco Lindor, on Monday night.
You'll be gone in a couple days.
Look, actually, they start here in about 30 minutes. So, it's funny. It's just an idea, and it shows you sort of how different each of these professional sports are. That, like, you could be a great hitter and not have an ACL, but if you can't, like you said, any of these guys. And as a Mets fan, I know all about Tommy John surgery for like everyone that's ever played for my team. But your superstar defensive tackle can have a missing needs Tommy John surgery, and it's no big deal. Just get him out there and play again.
It's crazy.
And it's not like you don't use your arms. Like, as a defensive tackle, your whole job is to keep blockers off of you. So it'll be interesting. James Lynch, I thought, okay, all right, interesting there.
Blake Benningfield did a whole couple graphs in a capsule form on Lynch, and thinks he should be out there on a weekly basis in a limited role. Really liked what he saw from Lynch, but they didn't miss Jeffrey Simmons in a big way. So I don't know how much of that is a tribute to the replacement pieces and how much of that is an indictment of what Simmons was or wasn't doing before, and how much of it is an indictment of the Dolphins. Again, I think we need to stick a reminder in on everything here. The Dolphins right now are very bad.
All of this is Miami. All of this is a quarterback that had even fewer days to get ready than Malik Willis. He had like less than a week. This is a Miami offense that could not get lined up. I think it is mostly due to that. At one point, I looked up in third or fourth quarter, and it looked like they had three or four starters out there on the defensive side. They had a ton of guys out there in replacement. Snead played pretty well. There was one that he just got torched on the line in scrimmage, but otherwise he played very, very well. I thought Amani Hooker played pretty well. I thought the defensive line played well. Jones and Murray are legitimately developing into a bona fide starting pair of linebackers.
Best pair of inside linebackers probably that they've ever had. I
mean, for a long time. I can't remember the amount of speed, quickness, agility, explosiveness. Those two guys are playing very well together, and Denard Wilson's using them quite well. So I thought the defense played pretty well. I do think that's mostly about Miami. That's a dumpster.
Mike McDaniel had a great quote just overall about what Miami did. He said it was a complete disconnect between preparation and execution, which is self-indicting, but also indicting his players. And Miami is way too talented to be like that. I don't know what the future holds for Tua, but even with Skylar Thompson, they can be better than that. It doesn't explain what happened to him defensively.
No, it does not. All right, let me ask you about special teams. We've seen this issue for the team. We've seen them change coaches. Multiple coaches have changed coaches. They got a punt tipped. I mentioned the onside at the end of the game, which doesn't really mean anything, but they were completely sort of like discombobulated, maybe not the right word.
Well,
the refs,
I think they ultimately played it right. And
I think so too.
Jaquan Jackson knew what he was doing in terms of the landing zone.
But people don't know all the rules yet. The players, the refs, the coaches. So like we're still all
The
learning.
officials did a shit job of explaining it on the microphone. If he had explained it clearly, then we'd all understand it and say, "Oh, the Titans actually knew what they were doing." Callahan admitted he was confused. So that's a complexity. And I think that those were the first 2 onside attempts of the season, as far as I know.
And then the big return from Berrios, which set up the game getting close to 9-6 in the third quarter. A bad coverage on that one. What are your thoughts on Colt McDonald in general and how hot the seat should be versus new rules and new coaching staff? Let's let it play out.
I think you've called him by 2 or 3 different names.
What did I call him?
You just called him Colt McDonald.
Colt McDonald, former quarterback.
Earlier you called him something else. Colt Anderson.
Anderson. My apologies.
Yeah. I mean, clearly he's not getting the job done, but between he and his predecessor, Craig Aukerman, it's making me think that a special teams coach with bottom feeder players or overrated players can only do so much. And I think the Titans pay a lot of lip service to special teams, but ultimately this version of the Titans made choices to keep Julius Chestnut over Hassan Haskins, a better running back over a better special teams player, and let a couple other good special teams players go, calculating that what they had would suffice. They've got 2 tight ends who might be good special teams players who've been deactivated for all 4 games, not being given chances to make contributions there. I don't know what value is being put on special teamers and that a guy could still get up the middle. Calais Campbell, who's 37 years old.
39 years old.
39. I'm cheating the guy out of 2 years. My God. And make a very physical play to get a hand on a ball. I mean, it's just outrageous that yet another guy gets up the middle and make a play. Now they turn out fine on that play. So I think there's a lot of forgiveness, in-house forgiveness, because it turns out all right, which is a dangerous thing. And I don't think I don't think we've seen the last of punt protection problems for this team because of that. Because if they were going to fix it, wouldn't be happening.
Yeah. But again, like new rules in the game, which granted, I talked to folks at multiple teams, including the Titans. No one had any clue what other teams were going to do when it came to the kickoff and all the new rules. So there's new rules packaged with a new coach and with a roster that's not particularly deep. That's going to lead to some of these problems, but you cannot let people block punts anymore. You got to stop with that shit.
Yeah.
It's got to be over.
I don't know that we're seeing it around the league. I mean, I don't get to watch a lot of games, but I certainly watch a lot of highlight packages, and I haven't seen an outbreak of this elsewhere.
Sinkers Beverages. Speaking of the NFL, I've got some stuff here that might make Titans fans feel a little bit better about their passing offense. So we'll get to that in just a second. However, Sinkers Beverages, Paul, 3-time Liquor Store of the Year, voted on by you, the Nashvillians. That means they're awesome at their jobs. Go support people who do their job well, unlike the Titans special teams. Go support them. Join the in-crowd. Huge beer fridge. Great bourbon selection. Great tequila knowledge. They got non-alc stuff. They got seltzers. They got RTDs. Wait, RTDs. Yeah, ready-to drinks. I got that right. And they've got tons of wine. Huge wine selection. I don't know anything about wine. I don't know if you're a wine drinker or not, Paul. I'm not. But I need like help when I walk into a store. Like, here's my occasion. Here's the thing we're doing. Here's what I need it for. Here's my price point. And they give me something that's quality and smart and good that impresses people, makes me look good. Sinkers Beverages, making me look good. For over 40 years. So go check out Sinkers Beverages, Bluegrass Beverages up in Hendersonville, their sister store, supporting the community up there for over 50 years. So almost 100 years of serving the Nashville community. Bluegrass Beverages, Sinkers Beverages. All right, here's some numbers. This is from ESPN Stats and Inc. Here's some numbers about passing offenses. And I've got an answer to this, and I want to see what you think. Basically, the question is, the numbers are passing offenses way, way, way down in the NFL. It's the 4th consecutive year in a row after a 20-year increase in production of passing yards going down per game per team. The NFL currently is averaging 202 yards passing per game on average across 32 teams. That is down 47 yards per game. I'm not good at math, but that's a huge decrease over the last 4 years, and it's gone down 5 straight seasons.
Let me count that for you. That's nearly 5 first downs.
That's a lot of offense that's disappearing out of the game. It was 250 yards per game passing in 2020. And they're on pace for the lowest passing offense in the NFL since 2001, when the game was reinvented by the St. Louis Rams, basically. So ultimately, we are looking at I've said this for a couple of years now. The defensive coordinators were going to catch up to all the rules. I think there's a couple of other things here as well going on. And here's some of the numbers. By the way, passing touchdowns, 156 passing touchdowns right now through 4 weeks, the lowest number since 2008. So again, just numbers way down. This is not a Titans problem. It's a league-wide problem. The defenses are better. They're more equipped. Here's my bullet points here. See what you think. Why is this happening? Number one, I think the thing that nobody talks about is that 7-on-7 tournaments from the age of like 12 to the time you get to the NFL has been pro offense for about 15 years. Now we have cornerbacks and safeties and linebackers that have been trained with the new rules since the age of 15 and have been playing in these types of offenses for 15 years now. And I think the defensive personnel has, number one, figured it out. I think they're starting to understand the game, the systems, the rules. They've adapted. That was expected. You can't change all the rules. It helps the offense and then not expect the defensive players to eventually adapt. That's going to happen. That's number one. The coordinators have adapted. They're playing safety quarter coverage, shell coverage, two high safety look because they're forcing everybody to take the mundane, as Brian Callahan says. That's number one. I think offensive lines are a problem in all of this.
Definitely.
College teams have offensive line problems. Offensive linemen are not being developed. The hit rate on first-round offensive linemen is down. Offensive lines are not being developed. And here's the other one. The average experience for the NFL starter is also at like a 15-year low right now currently. This is according to ESPN. From 2015 to 2022, the average number of games started by league average quarterbacks, 81 starts. So the average starting quarterback had 81 starts under his belt. Does that make sense?
Yep.
The last this year, 66 starts. Last year, 63 starts. So almost a 25% drop in experience across the league at quarterback. When you put it all together, the pendulum is going to swing in the favor of defense. And so with a young quarterback in Levis, with a young coach, with an inexperienced offensive line against defenses that are better, smarter, and more adaptable, this is what we're going to get for, I think, all of this season. I don't think it's going to go back until another couple years.
Less experienced quarterbacks behind worse offensive lines. And I think if you went around and we asked our colleagues in every NFL market, like, what's your team's biggest issue, or at least in their top three, I think a half to 2/3 would say offensive line. So you've got that. So that's a disadvantage. Then you've got a less experienced quarterback paying behind him. And I was talking earlier about sacks as a quarterback stat. So I think that's a root thing of the big problem. Then let's go to the coaching element that you talked about. You've got a high percentage, let's say 2/3 would be my ballpark figure. Tell me if you think that's right. Of head coaches are offensive coaches, new coaches getting hired, right? All the McVay, Shanahan guys who've touched the robe are offensive coaches. So the defensive guys are not getting hired, which means they're getting better and better at being defensive coordinators, while the offensive coordinators are becoming head coach play callers. So they're good. They're very good. But the defensive coordinators are more and more experienced. They're equal to their head coach defenses, really, in a lot of situations. They've got the head coaching caliber stuff. They just haven't gotten the jobs. So that's becoming more of a wash. Whereas if they were all moving up at the same time, there would be kind of different filtering. And so I think that's a factor.
I mean, the two premier, the two of the three premier defensive coaches hired, right? Dan Quinn, Raheem Morris, and Mike McDonald. Two of those are retreads.
Yeah, second timers.
Yeah.
So I do think, but then weird stuff happens. Like Washington should be, and I haven't looked at, should be a defensive team, and they might be playing very good defense. But the attention they're getting is they hit an apparent offensive home run so far with Jaden Daniels, and they're playing ridiculous offense, like going exceptionally long stretches without punting.
82% completion percentage by Jaden Daniels.
Yeah,
Silly.
outrageous. And I don't see any asterisks on that saying that he's throwing all checkdowns and screens either. So, look, it's all cyclical. You're going to hear that all the time, but it's not good for the league when you've got a 4-year trend favoring defense. And it's clearly not as good football. I watched games Sunday afternoon in Fort Lauderdale with the Titans playing on Monday night, and they were not fun. It was not enjoyable football. And that's a problem for the NFL, which is the one thing everybody watches, and it's the highest rated TV show all the time, whatever football's on. Are people going to stick with it? I think generally yes for your fantasy teams, and because there's no alternative to it. But, God forbid Netflix come up with 3 great things right now to tempt you away from a Sunday night football game that's going to be 2017.
Well, and again, I think a lot of folks have pointed to the defensive schemes forcing quarterbacks to go the long way, which is the long drives, forcing them to be more accurate, more consistently, instead of hitting the X plays, which we know are devastating for a team on a drive, give or take offense, defense. So we know that the scheme has changed, and we know we have offensive line issues. I think again, going back to my first point, I think that's the thing that we had all these changes to the game to create all this stuff. And we all agree, protect the quarterbacks, protect the receivers. And somebody on the comments was talking about sort of where do people invest? Well, the most expensive pieces on an NFL football field are quarterback number 1, the guy who throws the ball, pass rusher, guy who attacks the ball, guy who blocks the pass rusher, who protects the guy passing the ball. Now it's receiver and corner are the next 2. And so but we've also had all these defensive players grow up familiar with these rules finally. We now have a set of players on defense that have played against these rules every layer of their sport for their entire career. And that's the first time now that we've had that. And so what's going to happen, and people are talking about sort of devaluing the run game. I think Andrew was talking about that in the comments. That is what's going to come back here, because to force more people into the box is the only answer to the coaching problem. That's the only answer, is you got to force people to play in the box, and then that will open up the back end. But that's the only way you can do that. You can't. The running game is going to have to come back, and the Titans are well equipped to handle that.
That's still a snap by snap thing. I think A-Chain didn't face a loaded box in that whole game, so the Titans didn't need to load the box to limit him to next to nothing. But I don't think you're going to see, certainly not anytime soon, a huge running success that is going to move a safety down into the box for the bulk of a game. You might see it enough success that he's going to move into the box, on first down, maybe partially, but it's not going to be a complete transformation. The other thing that's happened here is the disappearance of the tight end. I mean, tight ends are not doing anything compared to what we've gotten used to. Just look around. If you're looking for a fantasy tight end,
it's impossible.
You can't find anybody that's doing anything. And if you look at the top guys, I mean, it's well documented that Kelsey has not really done anything, but it's not just Kelsey, right? I mean, has Kittle done anything?
Mark Andrews,
top guys done anything?
I don't
think
Mark
Condon to Laporta and McBride, and they're not doing anything. They finished last year big, but they're non-factors in terms of numerical offense right now.
It's why I liked Bowers, not for the Titans necessarily, but it's why I liked Bowers, because it is a limited resource. Good starting tight ends is a finite. There are only a finite number of humans, and it's not 32 that are playmakers in the NFL. It's not 32. Mark Andrews, I think, has caught 0 passes in 3 games.
I watched Mark Andrews drop a ball the other night, and I was thinking, is this guy done? And I went to Pro Football Reference and looked up. He's only 29. He can't be done, but he's looked really bad. I know he's coming off of something too, and I think he's coming off of it very slowly.
John says
that's why they kept 5. That's why they kept 5 to call 2 of them developmental.
Right.
So 2 of their 53 are developmental.
All right. Well, then let me ask you this, because I hear you lamenting and I hear you complaining all the time about the early season of college football, and you're not wrong about the blowout games that are designed to create revenue streams for small schools that don't have the ability to make money and keep their football programs alive to provide educations for a lot of young people in this country.
Educations is what they're providing. Yeah.
For most kids that play at the Group of 5 at Middle Tennessee State University, most of those kids are not going to have a chance at an education unless they play football, Paul. So stop being grumpy. But it's unfortunately the nature of the game. You got to play those games.
At schools lesser than Middle, I'm not convinced that the education is what those kids are leaving the school with.
Fair enough.
I don't know. I'd like to know the graduation rates of a lot of those schools that are being financed by losing 77-0.
But we did have Alabama, Georgia on Saturday night. So with the bad comes the good. And I don't know about you, but that is, I don't know if you watched any of it or not, but
I turned away for a long segment of time when it
were you satisfied if you watched the game? Because that was an extraordinary second half.
It was a very good second half. I would have preferred had it been competitive the whole time instead of like one half for each team. And I would have preferred to have come out knowing like who back is, which I didn't.
I think he's exactly what we saw. He's an interesting quarterback with lots of talent that takes a while to get going.
Yeah. I mean, it was entertaining. That's not the entertaining script that I would draw up. And there will be plenty of college football games that live up to the sort of entertainment that I want. But I'm not like, oh, I can't wait till the next Alabama Georgia game. I'm played out on that one for the time being.
I hear you on like the matchup being kind of stale. I get you. But the way that one played out is unlike anything we've seen in that matchup before. So if they get together, you never know. The point, I think what I learned coming away from that game is that they are easily 2 of the top 4 or 5 teams in college football. And you're going to have to go through one of the 2 of them to probably win the national championship. And both quarterbacks could be playing on Sundays very soon.
When things are good for Alabama, I'm generally not happy.
If you're here's what's funny. I tend to agree with you normally, but here's what's funny. Tennessee, if you're a Tennessee fan, and as an alumni, this is how all my friends and my wife was looking at the game. Tennessee's probably going to lose at Georgia. They've got a chance to beat Bama, so you got to root for Bama, and that's how they all thought about it. Very strange. Very strange.
Yeah, I mean, I'll root for Tennessee in both of those games as the lesser of the head-to-head 2 evils, but that's then at the risk of the behavior of the Tennessee fans post-victory.
Yeah.
Which
also sometimes fun to watch on social media. We'll see. Paul, what do you got? When are you talking to the coordinators? We had somebody ask about the coordinators. Are you talking to them?
No, they're done. I mean, there's no availability this week at all. Players are off after today. Coaches work tomorrow, and then they're off. So we'll talk to Callahan on Monday. I don't know when I will run it. I have to it's going to be some work first. But the big thing that I've got in the hopper that is worth signing up for by itself is a long discussion with Chad Brinker about the analytics department, who everybody is in there, what they're doing, and how it is all interconnected, who's working with the coaches, who's working with the scouts, and how it all kind of weaves together as one mighty department, and who's helping who and to what end.
You dropping that soon? Is that coming up?
I just unplugged my headphones, so I'm hearing nothing.
When are you dropping that? Are you dropping that soon? All right, here's what we're going to do. Everybody, thanks for listening. Thanks for listening. Thanks for hanging out.
Don't block the box. Be sure to lock your lock.
Stay tuned to paulkuharsky.com for a fabulous story about Chad Brinker in the analytics department, coming soon to a website and a computer near you. Otherwise, Sinkers Beverages, everybody. Check out the Hot Read podcast coming up next right here on the 440 Sports YouTube page. All the other great shows across the 440 Sports Network. We do appreciate you guys. And Pred season starting up, so lowerbroadhockey.com. We got you covered there on the Substack app. Me and Adam Vingan, Michael Gallagher, Emma Lingen, we got you covered there. Season gets started next week, so lots of stuff to do during the bye week. Otherwise, thank you for listening. For Paul, I am Braden. We will talk to you guys next week.